Alright, so this is my first Patreon video I thought I would do because today I did a blog on what we learn best at school. And while I continue on, I'm going to duck over to the blog Inspiration at play.wordpress.com. Not Linspiration. So I'm going to the blog and I just want to talk on some of the things that I wrote about. What you learn well in school. So let's talk about that. So I've posted this just this morning and I'm yet to pop it up on the Instagram. But I wanted to do a little video before that happens. So, repression. One of the reasons I choose not to do school for my children is because of the common problem that I see so many people have mentally with the epidemic we have, mental health, mental illness and depression, anxiety, all of that strong theme we have in our world today. I know there'd be an argument that, it just wasn't diagnosed back in the day. Well, back in the day as well, a couple of 100 years ago, there was no forced schooling. Life was very different. And contrary to popular belief, the research shows that literacy was quite high, in fact higher than when school was introduced. So you'll find a lot of this research and information shared by John Holt, currently reading Why Children Fail, which I'm not very far in, but I've read quite a few other books of his. And I love it already. He's an award-winning teacher, if you don't know who he is. He writes on unschooling. How did I get onto this subject? I can't remember. Sorry. So, repression. Alright, so that's the reason why, one of the reasons why. Mental illness, so we went to forced schooling. So he does share a lot of research that he's found on literacy, in unschooled children before school became forced schooling up. Mandatory schooling became a thing. Literacy was higher than the incline that they started to see in the decades following the introduction of forced schooling. Mandatory schooling. We're seeing a lot of mandatory and forced in the world today now again, aren't we? So interesting subject. So I am just looking at the blog for cues because I thought it would be great to elaborate on a few of the points that I mentioned. Why? So what school does well? One of the things we learn in school is repression. Now, the reason I'm so passionate about that is because I think bottling up emotions and things like that can lead to aggression and violence later on. We're seeing, in schools in America, because there is guns, there's a lot of shootings and things like that. And, mental illness is an increasing problem. So I don't believe sitting there and being basically constantly disregarded and spoken at all day for the majority of the week for all of your childhood is a very healthy environment, and environment's a big impact on well-being. No one can deny that. So another one that always comes to mind when people say, why not school? School teaches you to suppress your natural urges of movement, curiosity, play, fun, research and interaction. And the reason I say that is because as individuals, we all have our own interests. And being told what we should be focusing on just doesn't sit right with me. There's no autonomy there. So, you know, we all have organic curiosities. And in school, we're not able to explore that because there's a set curriculum. There's 8 key learning areas, and, you know, there's this history, and, you know, there's certain things that are celebrated and prioritised, and that may not be relevant to the individual. So that's, you know, one of my biggest issues with the school. That's what it does well. You learn to suppress your urges, your natural urges for movement. How are we still here in evolution thousands of years later, tens of thousands of years later as a species? We moved, we foraged, we hunted, and we kept ourselves alive because we physically had to. Yes, I know there's technology and there's a lot of excuses. We don't need that anymore. We don't need to. But we are designed to move. We are designed to sustain ourselves and to take part in that. And we're not doing it anymore. And instead we're just being told about a certain proportion of a minute area of each little subject that's prescribed to us, and it's so surface level, and we're not allowed to go deep because the bell rings. And what if we're interested? What we learn well in school is you don't matter, your interests don't matter. So what do people do? They end up internalizing their inner voice is quashed, and all they do is pay attention to the opinions of others, because in the school environment that's what matters most. Otherwise there's shame and there's competition, constant competition, comparison. And this is my biggest issue. The competition and comparison is so strong because there are grades and averages, and we are put into a pecking order. And so we do have to constantly have anxiety about what other people are thinking about us, and therefore everyone's opinion matters more, ends up mattering more to us. And then when we grow up, we have tuned well and truly out of our intuition. There's no more inspiration. It doesn't come from within anymore. It's all without. Because of this, I have to do this. Because of the news, I have to keep up with the grades, the news. I have to keep up with the Joneses. I've got to do what they're doing or I'll be left behind. And that's what it's all about. Especially with the No Child Left Behind motto that came in. You know, the government had the standardised testing. Why do we want to measure ourselves against other people? Why do we want to be standard? It doesn't make sense to me. And this is what the school system does so well. It standardises things and makes everything average. And why do we want to be average? We're not meant to be. We're all different. We all have a fingerprint that's unique, individual. So we should be. So we should be able to deafen ourselves to the outer world and the opinions. And one of my favourite sayings is, when the voice and the vision on the inside becomes louder and more profound than the voices and opinions on the outside, you've begun to master your life, by Dr. John Demartini, one of my greatest mentors on human behaviour. And so that really sinks the message, drives it home for me. What school does really well. It's all about the outer noise. There's no inspiration. It's not about you. The individual doesn't matter. Again, communism, socialism. It's not honouring an individual. There's no happiness and mental health there. When you just have to be the same. I don't like that cookie cutter, but that's me. And that's what I feel the school system does really well. What's everybody else doing? Let's compare. And I'm seeing it at a current theme with the explosion of homeschoolers not willing to send their children in masks, and not willing to dump their kids at the gate and say, oh, I'm not allowed to come in because I'm not vaccinated. I'm seeing all of that with the pressure to vaccinate, and people who don't want to with this experimental vaccine. There's this explosion of new homeschoolers who are hell-bent on recreating school at home. Don't realise that homeschooling isn't school at home. It's not meant to be. Why people don't do school is because they don't like the school, and the school doesn't work, and these people see that. And the thing is, I'm seeing this huge theme of everybody comparing notes and saying, what curriculum do you use? What should I be doing? I don't know what I should be doing. Comparing and looking at other people instead of tuning into the voice within, the inspiration, and knowing, using their knowing because they've been well trained out of it, because they went to school themselves. They forget that life itself has plenty to learn from. There's plenty we don't know. There's so much we don't know. We can go out and choose what we want to know. And this is the thing. This is the thing that people forget. They're just all they're worried about because they're schooled so much. They've had it drilled into them that they've got to compare and compete. They've got to measure themselves against other people and they want all to be average and standard. And it's just, that's the school system. So we have to de-school. We have to let that go in order for our children to be individuals. And that, to me, is what homeschooling, unschooling is all about. The freedom. So that's just the beginning of the blog that I thought I would elaborate on. And I feel like I've touched on quite a lot of it. So I will leave the first video there and probably just go deeper and deeper into it with the coming videos. So until then, thanks for listening and I look forward to seeing you soon.